At 2:47 in the morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. The message from Marcus made my stomach drop. "I'm staying at Claire's tonight. Come get me now or we're done." I stared at those words for 10 seconds. Then I typed back 5 words. "Then we're done, Marcus." Before I could think twice, I opened my contacts and found Claire's husband, Ben. I sent him a screenshot of Marcus's message, including the address. Within minutes, my marriage was officially over. By sunrise, Marcus showed up at my door, his eyes red and puffy, carrying a garbage bag of clothes. That morning taught me something important. Letting go feels better than holding on. Ben's phone call came at 2:48 a.m., exactly 60 seconds after I'd sent that screenshot. His voice sounded tired but calm, like he'd been expecting bad news. "Your husband is at my house right now," he said simply. "How long have you suspected?" he asked me. "About as long as you have, probably," I answered, looking at Marcus's message still glowing on my screen. "Come get me, or we're done." The truth was, I'd known something was wrong for weeks, maybe months. This message was just the final proof I needed. The weird thing is, 3 weeks before this happened, I'd sat next to Marcus at Sunday lunch with my family, still pretending everything was okay. That Sunday lunch haunts me now. Not because of what happened there, but because I was still trying so hard to ignore the truth. My mom, Susan, had made her special chicken casserole, the kind she only makes for important family days. She kept saying how lucky I was to have Marcus. 5 years together next month, she said, holding up her glass of lemonade. "You two make marriage look easy." Marcus squeezed my hand under the table, but his palm felt sweaty and wrong. His phone kept buzzing every few minutes. Each time it did, he'd peek at the screen, type something quick with one hand, then go back to eating like nothing was wrong. But I noticed how his shoulders got tight with every message. How his laugh at my dad's jokes came too late and sounded fake. Before we continue with the story about betrayal and finding freedom, if you think women deserve better than 2:47 a.m. messages from cheating husbands, please hit that subscribe button. It's free and helps these important stories reach others who need them. That same morning, I'd found the movie ticket while washing clothes. 2 tickets to The Late Show at the cinema on Oak Street, purchased at 9:30 p.m. last Tuesday. Marcus told me he was working late at the office that night. The tickets were crumpled up in his jacket pocket, like he'd shoved them there fast and forgot about them. I stood in our bedroom holding those tickets, feeling something change inside me. Not heartbreak yet, just the cold feeling of knowing I'd been lying to myself. I put the tickets in my purse and didn't say anything during lunch. I watched him act like the perfect husband while my family believed every word. He refilled my water glass without asking, told the story about how we met at that bookstore 4 years ago, kept his hand on my knee like we were still happy. My mom smiled so big. My dad nodded like he approved. My sister Amy kept saying we were relationship goals. The funny thing was, everyone saw what they wanted to see, just like I'd been doing for weeks. The morning routines showed the truth the most. Marcus still made breakfast for both of us, but now he'd turn his body away while checking his phone. He'd tilt the screen so I couldn't see what he was reading. Our goodbye kisses had turned into quick pecks that barely counted as touching. He'd started taking showers at night instead of mornings, filling our apartment with cologne that seemed too fancy for bedtime. "Big meeting tomorrow," he'd say, heading to the bathroom at 9 p.m. with his phone in his hand. I'd lie in bed listening to the water run way too long, wondering if he was texting her from behind the locked door. The smell of his body wash would drift out, something new and expensive he'd bought. Everything about him was becoming sharper and more expensive. Just not for me. The company picnic last July should have been my wake-up call. 2 months before that 2:47 a.m. message, we all met at Riverside Park for games and food. Ben introduced his wife Claire with such pride, his arm around her shoulders, calling her his best friend. She barely looked at me when we shook hands, her smile too quick and fake. But when Marcus told a story about the Johnson Project at work, Claire laughed like it was the funniest thing ever. Her hand touched his arm and stayed there while she pointed at the dessert table. Such a small thing, but it felt too comfortable, too familiar. Later, during the volleyball game, I caught them sharing a look across the net. Not just a glance, but a real look. the kind that carries secrets and promises. Marcus missed the ball because he was staring at her, and everyone laughed except me. I stood there in the hot sun, finally understanding why he'd been so excited about a work picnic he usually complains about. That was the day I started actually paying attention instead of looking away. I started noticing the gym charges on our bank account. Not for the gym near our apartment, but one across town near Claire's neighborhood. I started tracking how every work emergency happened when Ben was traveling for his job. The Thursday before that Sunday lunch, Marcus called at 6 p.m. to say he'd be late. His voice had that fake casual sound of someone trying too hard. "Johnson's being difficult about the report," he said. "Don't wait up for dinner." I stood in our kitchen holding the pasta I'd made, his favorite with the homemade sauce that takes 2 hours, and said okay. That was all. Just okay. Because what else could I say? I ate alone at our table, scrolling through his social media, discovering he'd liked every single one of Claire's posts from the past month. Beach pictures, coffee selfies, quotes about following your heart. Each little heart emoji he'd left felt like a tiny betrayal, breadcrumbs leading to something I didn't want to see. When Ben called me at 2:48 a.m., his voice strangely calm, I realized we'd both been watching our marriages fall apart from different places. Him from hotel rooms in other cities, me from our half-empty bed. "I just bought a plane ticket home," he said after we talked for a minute. "I've been collecting proof for weeks. My sister Emma has been sending me screenshots from Claire's social media, but I needed real evidence. And I just gave it to you," I said, my voice steady in the darkness. "Anna," Ben said, and I heard the weight in his voice. "Thank you for not letting me stay foolish any longer." We hung up without saying goodbye. Two strangers connected by the same betrayal, about to deal with the mess our spouses had made while we'd been trying to save marriages that were already dead. I sat there in the dark, Marcus's message still glowing on my screen, and realized this moment had been building for weeks. Every ticket, every turned phone screen, every night shower had been leading here, to 2:47 a.m. on a random Wednesday when the lies finally stopped and truth demanded its place. The bank statement arrived the next Monday, tucked between grocery ads and the electric bill. I almost missed it, but I'd been looking for answers after Ben's call. My hands were steady when I opened the envelope, but what I saw inside made them shake. Fit Zone Gym, monthly membership, $150. The address was across town, nowhere near our apartment, but exactly 4 blocks from Claire's house on Elm Street. Marcus came home that evening with new energy, his t-shirt fitting him differently. His arms looked bigger, his stomach flatter. I'd noticed the changes but thought it was stress, maybe eating less. Now I understood the 5 a.m. alarms, the gym bag that lived in his car, the protein drinks filling our fridge. "Maybe we should work out together," I said casually, placing the bank statement on the counter where he'd see it. "There's that new place on Main Street with couple discounts." He was washing an apple at the sink, his back to me. His shoulders tensed up. "I actually like working out alone. It's my thinking time before work gets crazy." "Right," I said, though going all the way across town seems far for thinking time. The apple stopped moving under the water. He turned off the faucet slowly, then turned to face me. "It's near the office. I go before work sometimes." His office was downtown, nowhere near that gym. We both knew it. He bit into the apple anyway, the crunch too loud in our quiet kitchen, and walked past me to the living room. The bank statement stayed on the counter, untouched, a lie neither of us would talk about directly. 2 weeks later, my brother Jack's wedding arrived like a test I was meant to fail. The invitation had been on our fridge for months. The Grand Hotel downtown, a fancy evening event. I'd bought a new dress, dark green with sparkles. Marcus had promised we'd make a weekend of it, maybe stay at the hotel, have breakfast the next morning like we used to when we first started dating. About the hotel, he said that morning, fixing his tie in our bedroom mirror. I checked the prices. $300 a night. We should probably just drive home after. "Jack's wedding is once in a lifetime," I said, already knowing where this was going. "We'll stay for the ceremony and dinner, but I've got that early meeting Monday. Need to prepare Sunday." His reflection wouldn't look at my eyes. At the reception, I watched Jack and his new wife Sarah dance to their first song. Marcus stood beside me, his hand on my back in that fake way he'd perfected. My cousin Lisa walked over during the salad, her voice soft with worry I didn't want. "Everything okay with you too?" she asked while Marcus was at the bar. "He seems distracted." "Work's been busy," I said, the excuse automatic now. She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe me. "If you ever need to talk." Marcus returned with our drinks just as the main food arrived. His phone buzzed. He looked at it, frowned, then stood. "I need to take this. Johnson's having another problem." He walked toward the lobby, phone already at his ear. I watched him go, noticing how he ran his hand through his hair while talking, something he only does when he's nervous. 10 minutes passed. 15. Our food got cold. When he came back, his hair was messed up, his shirt untucked on one side. "Johnson okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just needed to discuss some numbers." He sat down fast, checking his phone again. 2 more times during the reception, he stepped out for urgent calls. Each time coming back with some small detail wrong, his collar adjusted differently, a faint smell of perfume that wasn't mine. During Jack's bouquet toss, while all the single women gathered on the dance floor, Lisa stood beside me at our table. "Marcus has been gone a while," she said. "He'd left for his 3rd call 20 minutes ago." Through the windows, I could see him in the lobby pacing while on his phone, moving his hands around, not the movements of someone discussing work. "Anna," Lisa said softly, "you deserve better than whatever this is." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she didn't understand the pressure Marcus was under. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I watched my husband through the glass, wondering who was on the other end of that call, who was worth missing my brother's wedding for. The next Thursday, book club ended early. We'd read a mystery about a woman who discovers her husband's secret life, and the discussion had been uncomfortably pointed with too many sympathetic looks in my direction. I left claiming a headache and drove home in silence. Our apartment windows were bright when I pulled up, which was strange since Marcus had texted earlier about working late. I climbed the stairs quietly, my keys sliding into the lock without sound. The door opened to show Marcus on the couch with his laptop, video chatting with someone. The screen faced away from me, but I could hear a woman's laugh, bright and familiar. The second he saw me, he slammed the laptop shut so hard I thought it might break. "You're home early," he said, standing up too fast. Book club ended early. I set my purse down, noticing things I'd missed in my rush to enter. 2 coffee mugs on the table, though one had been quickly moved behind a magazine. A candle burning on the shelf, not one of ours, something expensive that smelled like vanilla and honey. The couch pillows rearranged, creating a cozier space than our usual setup. "Who were you talking to?" "Mike," he said without hesitation. "He's planning something for your birthday. Wanted my help picking a restaurant." My birthday was 5 months away. Mike had never planned anything for it in the 4 years we'd all known each other. But Marcus's explanation rushed out, words tumbling over each other about surprise parties and keeping secrets and wanting to make it special this year. The candle flickered between us, its strange smell filling our apartment. I walked to the kitchen, noticing the coffee pot on the counter. A brand we didn't buy. 2 mugs used. One quickly rinsed and placed in the drying rack. "Mike drinks tea," I said quietly. "He's trying to be more cultured," Marcus replied, but his voice had gone flat. The next morning, I found the candle in our bathroom trash, wrapped in newspaper like evidence being hidden. The coffee mugs were in the dishwasher, run overnight, as if that could wash away whatever had happened in our home while I was discussing fictional betrayals at book club. 3 days after that came Ben's goodbye party at the office. Claire organized it, of course, printing photos of Ben's work successes, ordering food from his favorite restaurant. She wore a black dress that seemed too fancy for an office party, her makeup perfect despite the tears she kept wiping away with tissues. 6 months, she said to everyone gathered, her voice breaking. 6 whole months without him. Ben stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, looking uncomfortable with her drama. When he caught my eye across the room, something passed between us. A recognition, maybe of performances we were both seeing. As people started mixing around, Ben walked over to me near the coffee station. "Anna, I wanted to ask you something." He pulled out his phone, adding my number to his contacts. Would you mind checking on Claire sometimes? I know she says she'll be fine, but 6 months is a long time. Behind him, I watched Marcus place his hand on Claire's shoulder, leaning in to whisper something that made her laugh through her tears. Of course, I told Ben, saving his number in my phone. I'll keep an eye on things. The temperature had dropped by the time I pulled into my parents' driveway on Thanksgiving, 3 months after Ben's departure. The house glowed warm against the dark November evening, windows fogged with cooking steam. I sat in my car for a moment, checking my phone one more time. Marcus's last text from 2 hours ago. Running late. Start without me. My mom, Susan, had the dining room set for 7. The good plates, cloth napkins folded into triangles, her grandmother's silver forks polished until they shined. She'd been cooking since morning, the turkey a perfect golden brown surrounded by every side dish our family loved. Jack and Sarah were already there with their baby. My dad, Robert, stationed in his chair watching football, the house filled with the sounds of a normal family holiday. Where's Marcus? My mom asked, not for the first time, as she handed me the mashed potatoes to place on the table. He'll be here soon. Work emergency. The lie came easily now. By 5:30, we couldn't wait any longer. The baby was getting fussy, and the turkey was starting to dry out despite my mom's careful covering with foil. We sat down, Marcus's empty chair screaming his absence. My dad said grace, his voice carrying that special tone of disappointment he'd perfected during my teenage years. At 6:45, my phone buzzed. Claire's car broke down, helping her find a mechanic. Don't wait up. I read it twice, then set my phone face down on the table. Of course, Claire's car on Thanksgiving when every mechanic was closed and Ben was thousands of miles away. The table had gone quiet, everyone pretending to focus on their plates while stealing glances at Marcus's empty chair. Is everything all right, sweetie? My mom's hand covered mine, her touch gentle but her eyes sharp with concern. Marcus is helping a coworker with car trouble, I said, cutting my turkey into smaller and smaller pieces. My dad set down his fork with careful precision. The sound echoed in the silence. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Robert Chun had been married to my mom for 35 years. He'd never missed a family dinner for someone else's crisis. By 7:30, my mom was wrapping leftovers in plastic wrap, creating careful packages labeled with tape. For Marcus, she said, though we both knew he would need them. She pressed a container of stuffing into my hands, then pulled me into the kitchen while the others watched football. Marriage takes work, honey, she whispered, her hands busy washing dishes that didn't need washing. But it shouldn't be this hard. The drive home felt endless. Every red light gave me too much time to think about where Marcus really was, what he was really doing. Our apartment was dark when I arrived, cold in that special way that means no one had been home all day. I put the leftovers in our fridge, still labeled in my mom's neat handwriting, and went to bed alone. Marcus came home at midnight, sliding into bed smelling like wine and someone else's perfume, his breathing fake steady, like he could trick me into thinking he'd fallen asleep right away. The following Tuesday, I sat in Dr. Patel's examination room, my blood pressure reading higher than it should be for a 30-year-old woman. She'd been my doctor for 5 years, knew my body's patterns better than I did. The stress medication doesn't seem to be working, I told her, my hands twisting in my lap. I can't sleep. My heart races randomly. I feel like I'm waiting for something terrible to happen. Dr. Patel set down her tablet, her dark eyes studying me with that special medical mix of professional concern and human kindness. Anna, is everything okay at home? The question unlocked something I'd been holding so tight it had turned hard in my chest. The words poured out. The late nights, the gym membership across town, the tickets for movies I didn't see. The way Marcus looked through me now instead of at me. I talked about finding coffee mugs for 2 when I'd been gone, about Claire's tears at Ben's goodbye party, about Thanksgiving dinner with an empty chair. Dr. Patel handed me tissues I didn't realize I needed, then sat back in her chair. What you're describing sounds like stress caused by ongoing problems. I can increase your medication, but Anna, medicine can't fix a relationship that's hurting you. She wrote 2 prescriptions, one for stronger stress medicine, another for a counselor named Dr. Maria Santos. Then she opened a drawer and handed me several booklets. Recognizing emotional harm, lies in relationships, when love hurts. I'm not saying this is definitely what's happening, she said carefully. But learning is never harmful. And Anna, taking care of your mental health isn't giving up. It's choosing to survive. I left with a paper bag full of information I was too embarrassed to read in the parking lot. The counseling referral stayed in my purse for a week before I finally called. The next interruption to my careful denial came from Emma Wilson, Ben's sister. She called my work phone on a Wednesday afternoon, her voice careful like someone approaching a scared animal. Anna, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I need to tell you something. My stomach dropped. Is Ben okay? Ben's fine. It's about Claire and your husband. The office suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in. I could hear my coworkers typing, living their normal lives, while mine tilted sideways. What about them? Claire has a private social media account. She thinks I don't follow it, but I do under a fake name. She's been posting things, photos that suggest. God, I don't know how to say this. Just say it, Emma. There are photos of them together, captions about finding happiness in unexpected places, and when you know, you know. I took screenshots. I can send them if you want, or we could meet for coffee.
No.
The word came out sharper than I meant. I mean, thank you, but I can't. Not yet. Emma was quiet for a moment. I understand. But Anna, you're not crazy. What you're suspecting is real. And when you're ready to see the proof, I'll be here. After she hung up, I sat at my desk staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Karen from accounting stopped by to drop off some papers and found me like that, frozen. Honey, you okay? She asked, and something in her voice suggested she already knew the answer. By the time the company Christmas party came around 2 weeks later, I'd stopped pretending even to myself. The venue was beautiful. The Grand Hotel's ballroom decorated in red and gold, a piano player performing classics, a free bar that Marcus visited more and more. I wore a blue dress I'd bought specifically to remind him I existed, but he barely looked at me when I came out of the bathroom at home. We arrived separately. He'd gone straight from work while I went home to change. When I walked in, I spotted them right away. Marcus and Claire by the dessert table, her hand on his chest, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. During the CEO's speech about company values and trust, I watched them drift toward each other like magnets. When the dancing started, they were on the floor for every slow song, his hand too low on her back, her face buried in his shoulder. Our coworkers pretended not to notice, but I caught the glances, the whispered conversations behind hands. Karen appeared at my elbow during "The Way You Look Tonight," pressing a glass of soda into my hand. My ride's coming in 20 minutes. You're welcome to share it. I watched my husband sway with another woman to a song we'd danced to at our wedding. Claire's eyes were closed, a small smile on her lips. Marcus's wedding ring caught the light as his hand moved up her back, the gold band I'd placed on his finger with such hope now just decoration, meaningless. Make it 15 minutes, I told Karen. As we waited outside for the car, the December air sharp enough to hurt, Karen squeezed my shoulder. You know the whole office knows, right? We've all been wondering when you'd finally be done with his nonsense. I thought about Dr. Patel's booklets, about Emma's offer of screenshots, about my mom's careful leftovers and my dad's disappointed silence, about the empty chair at Thanksgiving and the cold bed I'd come home to tonight. The slow unraveling was almost complete. Soon there would be nothing left to untangle. The ride dropped me at home that night after the Christmas party, and I knew something basic had changed. Not broken, changed like tectonic plates shifting before an earthquake. I stood in our dark apartment, still wearing my blue dress that Marcus hadn't noticed, and made a decision. If my marriage was going to end, it would be on my terms. Rebecca Thompson's office sat on the 15th floor of a glass building downtown, all clean lines and quiet colors that suggested expensive help. I'd found her through a coworker's recommendation, whispered over lunch with the careful tone people use when discussing serious illness. The Wednesday after Christmas, I sat across from her wooden desk, watching her take notes in handwriting so neat it looked typed. "Tell me everything," she said, her reading glasses on her nose, pen ready over a notepad. So I did. The gym membership across town, the missed holidays, the overnight bags packed for late meetings, the Christmas party where they danced to our wedding song. Rebecca's face never changed, but her notes filled page after page, occasionally marked by small sounds of understanding. "You've been documenting things?" she asked when I finished. I pulled out my phone, showing her the folder I'd created. Screenshots of bank statements, photos of tickets, text messages with timestamps, a spreadsheet tracking Marcus's work emergencies against Ben's travel schedule. They matched with scary precision. Rebecca set down her pen and looked at me directly. "Anna, you've been smart, smarter than most clients who walk through that door. The documentation will help, but we need to protect you financially before he knows what's coming." She explained the state's divorce laws with the kind of clarity that made hard things simple. Shared property, spousal support, the apartment lease that luckily had only my name on it, a decision I'd made before marriage when my credit was better than Marcus's. "You can legally remove him from the lease with 30 days' notice since you're the only one on it," she said, sliding a form across the desk. "I suggest you do it quietly. File it directly with your property management. Don't tell him until you're ready for him to know." She gave me a list of tasks, each one a small act of revolution. Open my own bank account, secure important documents, change passwords on everything, install security cameras. "For safety," she said with a knowing look. "Our state requires both people to consent for audio recording, but video in your own home is perfectly legal." I left her office with a folder full of information and something I hadn't felt in months: control. The elevator ride down felt like descent into battle, but I was finally armed. The next morning, I walked into Wells Fargo, not our usual credit union where Marcus might know the tellers. The location in Northside was far enough from our usual routes that I wouldn't run into anyone familiar. The new account person, a young woman named Dana with kind eyes and quiet professionalism, didn't ask why I needed a separate account when I mentioned being married. "We see this often," she said quietly, fingers flying across her keyboard. "Would you like paperless statements?" "Yes. Everything electronic." She helped me transfer exactly half our joint savings, $9,800 that represented years of careful saving, vacation money we'd never use, the start of a house payment I'd never make with Marcus. The debit card would arrive in 7 to 10 business days at my work address. The checks I'd never use went into my purse like evidence of a crime I was about to commit. Walking out of Wells Fargo, I felt my phone buzz. Marcus asking what was for dinner. I texted back, "Working late tonight. Get takeout." The lie came easily, probably because I'd learned from the best. I stopped at a small cafe in Northside, ordering tea with hands that shook slightly as I handed over my new debit card for the first time. The transaction went through. Such a small thing, but it felt like the first breath after being underwater. The security cameras arrived via delivery 2 days later during Marcus's morning workout across town. The package was heavier than expected. For cameras, a main hub, wires that would need hiding. I'd watched 3 YouTube videos the night before while Marcus slept beside me, learning about angles and blind spots and motion alerts. The living room camera went up first, positioned to catch the front door and main space. Another in the kitchen angled toward the eating area. One in the hallway facing our bedroom door. The fourth tucked into the bookshelf, nearly invisible among my novels, covering the area where Marcus usually sat with his laptop. The app on my phone came alive with feeds from each camera for squares showing our empty apartment from different angles. I could check them from anywhere, record footage, get alerts when motion was detected. The first test came that very evening, Marcus arriving home at 5:30, normal time, empty-handed. But the next Wednesday, the cameras caught him packing an overnight bag at 2 p.m. when he was supposedly in back-to-back meetings. He folded his clothes carefully, the gray sweater I'd bought him for Christmas, his expensive jeans, the cologne he only wore for special occasions. The unexpected network of support began forming without my conscious effort. Karen from accounting had started forwarding me things without being asked. "Thought you should see this," her emails would say, attached with Marcus's expense report showing dinner for two at restaurants I'd never been to, charges at hotels during lunch hours, rideshare receipts to addresses across town. James, our building's doorman, had taken to greeting me with extra warmth. One evening, as I collected mail, he mentioned casually, "Your husband left pretty early this morning, around 4:30 a.m. Hope everything's okay with that work emergency." There had been no work emergency. Marcus had told me he was going to the gym. "Thanks, James," I said, understanding the gift he was giving me. These tech companies, always something urgent. Even Rosa from the coffee shop downstairs had noticed. She'd been making my morning latte for 3 years, knew I liked an extra shot on Mondays, remembered my name without asking. The day after I'd installed the cameras, she handed me my coffee and held my gaze. "You okay, honey? You seem different lately." "Stressed." "Just work stuff," I said automatically. She nodded slowly. "That husband of yours used to come in every morning. Haven't seen him in months. Now he gets coffee at that place across town, according to his social media." She pulled out her phone, showing me Marcus's public profile. I'd stopped checking. There he was, tagged at Sunrise Coffee across town, posted by someone with the username Claire_W_47. "Men," Rosa said, shaking her head. "They think they're so clever." By New Year's Eve, 2 days away, I had a filing system. Bank statements in one folder, screenshots in another, camera footage backed up to the cloud, written timeline of events that Rebecca had suggested I maintain, contact information for 3 divorce lawyers besides Rebecca just in case, the business card for Dr. Maria Santos, the counselor Dr. Patel had recommended, finally pulled from my purse and pinned to my bulletin board. Each piece of evidence was another brick in the wall I was building between my old life and whatever came next. Marcus had no idea that while he was building his affair, I was building my exit. He still kissed my forehead each morning, that distracted, automatic touch. Still said "love you" when he left, the words empty as an echo. Still came home smelling like vanilla and honey, Claire's perfume now as familiar as his cologne. But I was no longer the woman waiting with cold pasta, hoping for explanations. I was the woman with cameras recording his lies, bank accounts he didn't know about, and a lawyer on speed dial. The war hadn't been declared yet, but I was ready. Every document filed, every dollar secured, every ally identified, they were all weapons waiting to be used. The apartment felt different now, even though nothing visible had changed. It was no longer our space, but my surveillance zone. Each room held secrets, the hidden cameras, the lawyer's card in my jewelry box, the new bank statements arriving only to my email. I moved through our home like a spy in enemy territory, gathering information for a confrontation that felt as certain as sunrise. New Year's Eve arrived with the kind of bitter cold that makes the city huddle indoors. Marcus had left for Mike's party around 8:30, kissing my forehead with those dry lips that felt like a stranger's touch. Mike was in Colorado with his family. I knew because he'd posted social media stories all day. But I said nothing, just watched Marcus adjust his collar in the hallway mirror, spraying on cologne like armor against his guilt. The apartment fell silent after he left. I poured myself a glass of the wine we'd been saving for a special occasion, realizing this qualified. Midnight came and went with no text from my husband, no champagne kiss, no promises for a better year ahead. The city celebrated below my window while I sat in darkness, the only light coming from my laptop screen. Our wedding photos lived in a digital folder titled, Our Forever. Such innocent optimism in that naming. I open it at 12:35 a.m. The photos loading like evidence at a trial. There we were for years younger, foolish with hope. Marcus's eyes actually focused on me then, his smile reaching all the way to the corners. I looked radiant in white silk, believing I'd found my person.
Delete.
The garden ceremony shot vanished.
Delete.
Our first dance disappeared. Delete. The cake cutting, his mom crying, my dad's proud smile, all of it erased with surgical precision. Each photo removed felt like surgery without pain medicine, necessary but brutal. By 1:15 a.m., the folder was empty, For years compressed into nothing, leaving only blank space where memories used to live. I moved to the living room, unable to face our bedroom where Marcus's pillow lay untouched, that empty space on his side of the bed that had become permanent geography. The security camera app showed the empty apartment from 4 angles, timestamp running in the corner, like a countdown to something I couldn't name. The coffee maker called to me. Sleep was impossible now, anyway. The coffee was too strong, bitter enough to make my eyes water, but I drank it black while scrolling through my phone. Marcus's location showed him at Claire's house. Not Mike's party, not some bar downtown, Claire's house on Elm Street where Ben's photos still hung on the walls, where his baby's room waited empty for his return. At 2 a.m., I opened my laptop again and pulled up the document I'd been keeping for Rebecca. The timeline of Marcus's lies, each entry dated and detailed. The latest entry, January 1st, midnight. Marcus claims to be at Mike's party. Mike is in Colorado. Marcus's location shows Elm Street. I was adding this note when my phone exploded with the emergency alert at 2:47 a.m. The sound tore through the apartment silence, that specific tone Marcus had programmed for himself, the one meant for true emergencies. My hands were perfectly steady as I read his message. I'm at Claire's house. Come get me now or we're done. The ultimatum sat there on my screen, pulsing with nerve. He wanted me to drive across the city at 2:47 a.m. to pick him up from his affair, like I was some kind of taxi service for his cheating. The boldness was almost impressive. I read it 3 times, each reading solidifying something that had been liquid in my chest for months. This was it. The moment everything hardened into perfect, sharp clarity. My fingers moved across the keyboard without shaking. Then we're done, Marcus. 5 words. No explanation, no emotion, just fact. But I wasn't finished. Ben's contact information was already pulled up. We'd exchanged numbers at his goodbye party when he'd asked me to watch out for Claire. The irony of that request felt like dark poetry now. I forwarded Marcus's location pin with surgical precision, adding a single line. Thought you should know where your wife is entertaining my husband at 2:47 a.m. You're overseas, right? The moment I hit send, Marcus started calling. The phone lit up with his face, a photo from 2 years ago when he still looked at me instead of through me. I watched it ring, counted the vibrations against the coffee table, then declined the call. He called again immediately. Declined. Declined. Claire's number appeared next, then Marcus again, then an unknown number that was probably Claire's landline. The phone became a lightning storm of desperate attempts at contact, buzzing and ringing and lighting up like a slot machine hitting jackpot. I picked it up, looked at the chaos of notifications, then held down the power button. The screen went black. The silence that followed felt sacred, like the moment after confession, when sins are supposed to be forgiven. Except I wasn't seeking forgiveness. I was granting myself freedom. The bedroom welcomed me differently now. The bed seemed larger without the weight of waiting for Marcus. His pillow no longer mocked me. It was just fabric and stuffing, meaningless without the person who should be using it. I slid under the covers, my body finding the center of the mattress instead of clinging to my designated side. For the first time in 6 months, maybe longer, I fell into real sleep. Not the restless, half-aware watching I'd been calling rest, but actual deep sleep where the mind finally releases its death grip on awareness. I dreamed of empty rooms with white walls, of painting them colors Marcus would hate, deep purple, midnight blue, that perfect shade of green that looks like forest shadow. I dreamed of silence without the underlying question of where he was, who he was with, when he'd come home. Morning arrived with sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close the curtains on. No alarm needed. My body woke naturally at 6:45 a.m., refreshed in a way that felt foreign. The apartment was still silent, but it was a different quality of silence now, peaceful instead of tense, complete instead of waiting. I made coffee in the French press, taking time to measure the grounds precisely, to wait the full 4 minutes for it to steep. My phone sat on the counter, still powered off, a black mirror reflecting nothing. The urge to turn it on flickered and died. Not yet. This piece was too precious to shatter with whatever digital chaos waited inside. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and watched the city wake up below. People walking dogs, joggers defying the January cold, normal life continuing while mine had just exploded and reformed into something unrecognizable. The coffee tasted perfect, not too bitter, not too weak. Everything felt sharper, more defined, like I'd been looking at life through foggy glass and someone had finally cleaned it. At 7:45 a.m., I finally powered on the phone. It vibrated for 30 seconds straight, notifications piling up like accident victims. 27 missed calls, 63 text messages, 22 voicemails. The numbers felt like a score in a game I'd already won. Marcus's first voicemail, timestamp 2:48 a.m. Baby, please, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Claire had too much to drink at a party, and I was just making sure she got home safe. Please call me back. Claire's voicemail, 3:10 a.m., sobbing. You evil woman. You've ruined everything. Ben's coming home. You've destroyed my life. But the one that made me smile, actually smile, was Ben's 3:40 a.m. message. Anna, I'm at the airport. I've booked the first flight home. My lawyer will be in touch about the evidence. Thank you for having the courage to do what needed to be done. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter, Ben's voicemail still echoing in my mind when I heard footsteps on the stairs outside. Heavy, uneven, like someone climbing who hadn't slept. Through the peephole, I saw Marcus standing there at 8 a.m. looking like someone had put him together from spare parts of the man I'd married. His shirt was the same one from last night, but wrinkled beyond saving, half-tucked with a stain spreading across the front. The gas station cup in his hand shook slightly, plastic lid not quite secure, threatening to spill. I opened the door, but didn't step aside to let him in. The January morning air rushed between us, carrying the smell of his desperation, stale alcohol, Claire's perfume, and the particular sourness of panic. Anna, thank God, he started, moving forward like he belonged inside. I held up my hand. You can say what you need to from there. His face did something complicated, surprise, hurt, then anger cycling through like channels on a broken television. It's my apartment too. Actually, it's not. I pulled the document from the side table where I'd placed it days ago, knowing this moment would come. You were removed from the lease last week. 30 days' notice was filed with management on December 20th. You have until January 19th to collect your belongings. The paper trembled in my extended hand. He didn't take it, just stared like I'd spoken in a foreign language. The gas station coffee slipped from his grip, hitting the concrete hallway with a splash that looked like modern art, dark liquid spreading in directions that made no sense. You can't do that. The apartment's in my name. Always has been. My credit, my deposit, my signature. You're listed as an authorized occupant, which I had legally removed. Your belongings will be available for pickup by appointment. Rebecca's words came through my mouth, calm and precise. His legs seemed to give up their job. He leaned against the doorframe, and for the first time I saw him clearly. Not the marketing executive with the easy smile, not the husband who'd charmed my family, not even the cheater who'd been living a double life. Just a 33-year-old man who'd gambled everything and lost. Claire kicked me out, he whispered. The moment Ben called her, she literally threw my clothes on the lawn. Said I wasn't worth losing her marriage over. Said I was just fun while Ben was gone. I wanted to feel something, sympathy, satisfaction, even pity. But there was only the cold observation of fact, like watching a nature documentary about hunters becoming hunted. My phone buzzed. Emma calling. I should take this, I said, starting to close the door. Anna, please. Your mom knows some good hotels, I said, then shut the door with a soft click of finality. Emma's voice burst through the moment I answered. Anna, you have to hear this. Claire completely lost it. She's been throwing Marcus's stuff on the lawn for the past hour. The neighbors called the police thinking it was a fight. Through my window, I could see Marcus still standing in the hallway, staring at the closed door like it might magically open. Emma continued, her words tumbling over each other with the breathless quality of someone watching a car crash in slow motion. Claire's been playing both sides this whole time. She never planned to leave Ben. She just wanted attention while he was traveling. She literally called Marcus a placeholder in front of the police. Said he was convenient but replaceable. The irony was so perfect it felt scripted. Marcus had destroyed our marriage for someone who viewed him as temporary entertainment, a warm body to fill empty space. He'd been having an affair with someone who was also having an affair with him. The best part, Emma said, and I could hear the vindictive satisfaction in her voice, is that Ben's already contacted a divorce lawyer from the airport. Claire's about to lose everything. The house is in his name, the cars, even her credit cards are all authorized on his accounts. After Emma hung up, I made myself breakfast. Real breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. Not the coffee and worry diet I'd been surviving on for months. I was halfway through eating when my phone rang. Michelle Bradford, HR director at Marcus's company. At our company technically, though I worked in a different department. Anna, I apologize for calling on a holiday, but this is urgent. We've received some concerning information about expense report problems involving Marcus and Claire Wilson. I understand you might have documentation that could help our investigation. I set down my fork. What kind of documentation? Receipts, credit card statements, anything showing personal expenses charged to company accounts. We've received an anonymous tip with social media screenshots, but we need to verify the timeline. Anonymous tip. Emma had been busy. I have everything, I said. Dates, amounts, locations, all cross-referenced with supposed client meetings that never happened. Michelle's relief was audible. Could you email those to me today? We're opening a formal investigation Monday morning. I spent the next hour putting everything together. Every receipt from the gym across town, every dinner charge from evenings Marcus claimed to be working, the pattern was damning. Over 6 months of systematic fraud using company resources to fund an affair. The timestamp showed my email sent at 10:30 a.m. By 11:15, Marcus's mother Patricia was calling. I almost didn't answer, but something made me want to hear what she'd say. Patricia Brennan had always been a force of nature, the kind of mother who believed her son could do no wrong, who'd made excuses for every failure, every shortcoming, every red flag I tried to discuss with her over the years. How could you? She launched in without greeting, her voice shaking with tears and rage. He's standing in my driveway destroyed because you couldn't forgive one mistake. Patricia, I said, keeping my voice level. It wasn't one mistake. It was 6 months of calculated lies. He was at another woman's house at 2:47 this morning. He's confused. He needs support, not abandonment. Marriage is about working through problems. He made his choice repeatedly for months. Her tears transformed into something harder, meaner. You're heartless. Absolutely heartless. Throwing him out like garbage, destroying his career, embarrassing him publicly. Heartless, I repeated, tasting the word. Patricia, heartless is what he did to me while Claire's husband was overseas working to support his family. Heartless is lying every single day for 6 months. Heartless is sending me an ultimatum from his affair partner's house at 2:47 a.m. You're going to regret this, she hissed. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. You'll pay for destroying my son. Your son destroyed himself, I said. I just stopped enabling it. The line went dead. I deleted her number from my phone, another small act of liberation. By noon, my security camera app showed movement. Marcus had returned with Mike in a rental van, loading boxes I'd packed and left in the building's storage room as Rebecca had suggested. He moved like an old man, shoulders curved inward. That confident posture I'd once found attractive now completely dissolved. Mike kept trying to talk to him, but Marcus just shook his head, loading box after box of the life he'd gambled away. The camera caught him looking up at our window once, just standing there in the parking lot holding a box labeled wedding albums. I watched him through the electronic eye of the camera, feeling nothing but the distant observation of a chapter closing. Mike had just driven away with the last box when Rebecca called. The court date is set. February 12th, 9 a.m. Bring everything we've discussed. Her voice carried that particular satisfaction of a lawyer who knew she'd already won. The 6 weeks between that call and the courthouse felt like watching a slow-motion avalanche from a safe distance. Marcus hired a lawyer, some budget attorney from a strip mall who specialized in traffic tickets and quick divorces. I knew because Karen from accounting, who'd become an unexpected ally, mentioned seeing Marcus in the parking lot of Quick Legal Services, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 5 weeks. February 12th arrived gray and drizzling, the city's sky matching the gravity of the occasion. Rebecca met me outside the courthouse, her navy suit perfect, her briefcase containing enough evidence to bury Marcus twice over. She'd organized everything into labeled folders, financial records, credit card statements, the social media screenshots Emma had provided, even the security camera footage of Marcus packing overnight bags for his late meetings. His lawyer tried to argue for spousal support, Rebecca mentioned as we climbed the courthouse steps. I laughed, actually laughed. Then I sent him the fraud documentation. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, more office than theater. Marcus sat at the opposite table wearing the same suit he'd worn to our wedding. I recognized the tiny stain on the sleeve from when my Uncle David had gotten enthusiastic during his toast. His lawyer, a nervous-looking man named Gary something, shuffled papers like he was looking for a miracle between the pages. Judge Patricia Martinez presided with a kind of no-nonsense energy that suggested she'd seen every possible version of marriage disaster. Rebecca presented our case with surgical precision, each receipt projected on a screen, each social media screenshot timestamped and verified, the credit card charges to hotels during lunch hours, the gym membership across town, the systematic pattern of lies laid out like a map of betrayal. Your Honor, Rebecca said, placing another folder on the judge's bench. The respondent used marriage assets to fund his extramarital relationship. State law is clear on wasting of assets. Every dinner, every hotel room, every gift purchased for Ms. Wilson represents money stolen from the marriage estate. Marcus's lawyer tried to object, argue, minimize, but what defense could stand against receipts, screenshots, and Marcus's own expense report showing he'd charged affair dinners as client meetings? Judge Martinez's expression grew colder with each piece of evidence. When Rebecca showed the security footage of Marcus packing bags while claiming to work late, the judge actually shook her head. Mr. Brennan, she said, looking directly at Marcus, did you believe your wife wouldn't notice $15,000 in unexplained charges over 6 months? Marcus mumbled something about stress and mistakes. The judge cut him off. These aren't mistakes. This is systematic lying and financial fraud against your spouse. The ruling was everything Rebecca had promised. The apartment remained mine, the savings mine, half of Marcus's retirement transferred to me. He kept his personal debt, including the credit cards he'd hidden, the ones he'd used for hotel rooms and weekend trips with Claire. The judge even ordered him to pay my lawyer fees, another $7,000 he didn't have. Petition for dissolution granted, Judge Martinez announced. This marriage is dissolved. Walking out of that courthouse, officially divorced, felt like stepping out of a dark theater into daylight. Rebecca shook my hand, told me I'd been the ideal client, organized, rational, with evidence that made her job easy. Marcus stood by his car in the parking lot, looking at papers his lawyer had given him. For a moment our eyes met across the rain-slicked asphalt. Then I got into my car and drove away, leaving him standing there like a memorial to his own destruction. 2 months later, March brought unexpected sunshine and a text from Ben. Coffee? I owe you a proper thank you. We met at a small place in Riverside, neutral territory away from both our old lives. Ben looked healthier than I'd expected. Working overseas had given him color, and the absence of Claire's chaos had restored something younger in his face. He stood when I arrived, a gesture Marcus had stopped making years ago. You saved my life, he said without introduction once we'd ordered. I would have spent years funding her affairs, thinking I was the problem. We saved each other, I corrected. Your call at 2:48 a.m. confirmed I wasn't losing my mind. He laughed, not bitter, but genuinely amused. Claire's still posting on social media, motivational quotes about rising from ashes and finding yourself through hard times. She's living with her mother in Southside, working part-time at a yoga studio. I pulled out my phone, showing him Marcus's latest professional profile post about career pivots and learning from failure. We both laughed, the free sound of people who'd survived the same storm. He tried to contact me, Ben said, stirring his coffee. Marcus wanted to compare notes about Claire, like we were going to form some kind of pathetic support group for men who'd been played. What did you tell him? Nothing. Blocked his number. I'm not interested in bonding over mutual stupidity. We talked for 2 hours, comparing divorce settlements, sharing the absurd details that only people who'd been through the same specific disaster could appreciate. Before leaving, we exchanged numbers, not romantically, just as fellow survivors who might occasionally need to confirm that yes, it had really been that insane. The next test came at family dinner that Sunday. I'd finally told my parents and Jack everything. Not the cleaned-up version I'd been feeding them, but the whole truth, the 2:47 a.m. message, Claire, the investigation, all of it. Jack's knuckles went white around his beer bottle. I knew something was off at Thanksgiving. I should have. You couldn't have done anything, I interrupted. My mom had gone through her own stages of processing. First, disappointment that the marriage had failed. Then, as the details emerged, a transformation into protective fury I hadn't seen since high school, when a teacher had unfairly accused me of cheating. I'm updating the family photos, she announced over dessert. Already removed him from the last 4 years. Photo editing is wonderful these days. Mom, you don't have to erase history. Yes, I do. He erased himself from this family the moment he chose another woman over my daughter. My dad raised his glass to Anna's freedom. They all raised their glasses. Jack, Sarah, even the baby with his sippy cup. The warmth of their support filled spaces in my chest I hadn't realized were cold. 3 weeks after that dinner, I ran into Mike at the grocery store. Marcus's best friend, former best friend, looked uncomfortable between the organic produce and our unexpected encounter. He was buying ingredients for what looked like a dinner party, good wine, expensive cheese, the kind of spread Marcus used to insist we serve when entertaining. Anna, he said, like my name was a question. Mike. I should tell you, Marcus is in Portland now, working at a startup with our friend from college. Entry-level marketing. Entry-level. After 7 years as a senior account manager, the fall was complete. He's dating someone, Mike continued, clearly uncomfortable but feeling obligated to share. 23, just graduated. Thinks he's worldly and sophisticated. I felt nothing. Not jealousy, not pity, not even satisfaction. Just the neutral observation of information that no longer affected my life. I hope she's smarter than I was, I said, meaning it. Mike shifted his weight. He talks about you sometimes. Says he wants closure, to explain. There's nothing to explain. And closure isn't something he gets to take from me. It's something I gave myself at 2:47 a.m. when I chose to stop participating in his games. I left Mike standing there with his party supplies, understanding finally that indifference was the most complete form of closure possible. The grocery store encounter with Mike lingered for about 10 minutes before dissolving like sugar in rain. I finished my shopping, bought myself flowers, pink roses that had nothing to do with anyone but me, and drove home to the apartment that had become my safe place. The May afternoon stretched golden through my windows, and I opened them wide to let the city sounds mix with my music. 7 months. 7 months since that 2:47 a.m. message had cracked my life open like an egg, letting something new and unexpected emerge. I'd started taking painting classes on Wednesdays, my hands learning to shape color on canvas into art that was imperfect but mine. I joined a running group that met Saturday mornings, discovering routes I'd never explored during my married years when weekends meant waiting for Marcus to decide our plans. The first Sunday of June arrived with unusual sunshine, the kind that brings all the city outdoors. Riverside Market bloomed with crowds, and I wandered through slowly, no schedule pressing me forward. The flower vendors called out prices, their buckets full of daisies and lilies. I was examining sunflowers, their faces broad and unapologetic, when I felt that particular shift in air that means someone is staring. Marcus stood 20 feet away near the fruit stand, his hand on the lower back of a young woman who looked fresh out of college. She had that shine of untested optimism, gazing up at him while he pointed at something in the market. Her sundress was the kind of hopeful yellow that suggested she believed in happy endings. I recognized her expression. It was mine from 4 years ago, before I learned that some men treat love like a convenience store, taking what they need and leaving when something better opens down the street. He saw me. His hand dropped from her back, his body turning slightly toward me, like a compass finding north. For a moment, I thought he might approach, might try to create some scene from a movie where exes exchange meaningful words. His mouth opened, forming the shape of my name. I turned back to the sunflowers. "I'll take 6, I told the vendor, pulling cash from my wallet. Behind me, I could feel Marcus's presence like weather changing, but I didn't turn around. The vendor wrapped my sunflowers in brown paper, tied them with string, and handed them over with a smile. I walked past the fruit stand, through the crowd where Marcus still stood frozen, his new girlfriend now tugging at his arm with questions I could imagine, but didn't care to hear. My indifference wasn't performed. It was as real as the sunflowers in my arms, as solid as the ground beneath my feet. Marcus had become a stranger whose story no longer intersected with mine. And that truth tasted like freedom. Monday morning brought Michelle to my office. Not my cubicle, but my actual office. The promotion having appeared in April like a reward for surviving with grace. "The board met Friday," she said, closing the door behind her. "They're creating a new position, Director of Ethics and Compliance. The job is yours if you want it." I set down my coffee carefully. "Why me?" "Because you handled the investigation with complete professionalism while your personal life was falling apart. Because you maintained your work quality when lesser people would have collapsed. Because the board believes someone who can navigate that level of personal crisis while protecting company interests is exactly who should be preventing future incidents." The irony was almost poetic. Marcus's fraud had created the need for this position, and my survival of his betrayal had qualified me to fill it. The salary Michelle mentioned made me grateful I was sitting down, enough to not just survive but actually thrive, to travel, to save, to never again be financially dependent on anyone. "There's one more thing," Michelle added. "The corner office on 15 is yours. The one overlooking the river." After she left, I stood in what would be my new office, watching boats cross the water like slow-moving promises. Success tasted different when you'd earned it, not in spite of disaster, but because of how you'd handled it. Every spreadsheet I'd completed while my marriage crumbled, every meeting I'd run while my life rearranged itself, it had all counted. That evening, the city delivered one of its signature summer rainstorms, the kind that arrives suddenly and leaves everything clean. I opened every window in my apartment, letting the rain-scented air fill the space. The apartment had transformed since January. New art on the walls, pieces I'd chosen without committee, colors Marcus would have called too bold. Plants everywhere, thriving in corners where his gaming setup used to dominate. Books stacked on surfaces, because I no longer had to keep everything magazine perfect for someone who didn't notice anyway. I found myself in the closet, pulling out the folder Rebecca had given me at our final meeting. The divorce decree, official and stamped, felt like ancient history even though it was only months old. I considered throwing it away, but instead tucked it back in the folder, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of survival. The rain intensified, and I made tea, settling into the couch that was now arranged for one person's comfort, not two people's compromise. My phone sat silent on the coffee table, no longer a source of worry, wondering who Marcus was texting, what excuse he'd offer. Just a device that connected me to people who actually wanted my presence. That's when the understanding arrived, complete and sudden like the rain. The 2:47 a.m. message hadn't been a destruction. It had been a gift wrapped in barbed wire. Marcus's ultimatum, "Come get me or we're done," had forced me to make the first honest choice I'd made in months, maybe years. I'd chosen myself. Not revenge, though that would have been easy. Not the dramatic confrontation that movies suggest we need. Just the simple revolutionary act of saying, "Then we're done, Marcus," and meaning it. The peace I felt now wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the presence of truth. Every room in my apartment breathed with honesty. Every plan I made included only my own desires. Every morning arrived without the weight of wondering what lies I'd have to navigate. Revenge would have required continuing to engage with Marcus's chaos, spending energy on someone who'd already taken too much. But consequences, those had arrived naturally, like rain after drought. His job lost his own fraud, his mistress discarding him once the thrill evaporated, his reputation destroyed by his own documented choices. I hadn't needed to arrange anything. Truth has its own momentum. I closed my eyes, listening to the rain against windows, and realized something profound. I would never again wake at 2:47 a.m. to someone else's crisis dressed as my responsibility. That specific time had become sacred in reverse, a moment when I'd chosen peace over drama, silence over chaos, myself over someone who'd already chosen someone else. The young woman with Marcus at the market would learn her own lessons in her own time. Mike would eventually stop feeling obligated to provide updates. Ben and I would exchange occasional texts like veterans of the same war, comparing how much better peace felt than battle. But tonight, in my apartment full of plants and art and silence that felt like music, I understood the final truth. Peace tastes better than revenge because it's permanent. Revenge is a meal you consume once, but peace is a home you inhabit forever. And at 2:47 a.m., when the city sleeps and the world holds its breath, I sleep too, deeply, completely, finally free. If this story of that 2:47 a.m. message and sweet justice had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Anna simply replied, "Then we're done, Marcus," and forwarded his location to Ben overseas. What was your favorite moment of justice? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. This is Women's Revenge, reminding you that sometimes the best revenge is simply choosing yourself. Thank you for watching, and remember, you deserve peace more than you deserve revenge. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never settle for less than you deserve. If you or someone you know is going through something similar, please know you're not alone. There are resources and people who care. Check the description below for helpful links. And always remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you in the next story. Peace tastes better than revenge, friends. Never forget that.